Hi there, Serial Trader here. Let's just do a little check-in on the major US indices, as it's been a while since I did one. And not a whole lot has changed since the last video. We have still been trending higher, although today we've seen a little bit of a sell-off developing. And at this point, you still can't, if we're considering this low down here at 27.22, this wave 4, if we're considering that to be the wave 4 low, then we need to count a clear 5 waves up for wave 5 before we can start looking for a potential pivot. And I mean, right now we can only count so far just a 3-wave advance off that low. So that keeps the, well, I'd say short intermediate term outlook still for somewhat higher levels. But we are still in a fairly extended condition, certainly from those December lows. And it is interesting, we had a little bit of a reaction off this, what used to be a support trend line, now a little bit of a reaction off that, potentially serving up as some resistance, as you can see there. But certainly not expecting anything significant to the downside just yet, if that ever even materializes here anytime soon. And this overall wave count, very much in question at this point, although truly to invalidate it we do have to make a new all-time high, because wave 2 can retrace up to 100% of wave 1, but I mean we're not all that far from invalidation, and that'll clear some things up if we do get there. And certainly there's some other more bullish wave counts we can lean on at that point, but for now I'll leave it up. And we're still in this Elliott channel, and certainly it would be notable if we broke below and closed and stayed below this lower trend line, which we have not done yet. You see we ran into it here, had some interaction with it, but ultimately still found a way to trend higher still. So not a whole lot's changed on this overall wave count on this chart. There's just one thing I want to quickly point out before I go on the shorter term wave count, and that's the potential that we still have a very large head and shoulders pattern developing on this monthly time frame. This is the monthly chart of SPX, and that's where you'd have the left shoulder where we made the high in January of 2018, and the head where we made the high in September of 2018, and the right shoulder, currently looking to form the top of that here in the not so distant future. This head and shoulders pattern, to be invalidated, we have to take out the top of the head, and that is also the same same level that would invalidate the bearish Elliott wave pattern, the 1 down 2 up scenario. So things need to be cleared up here before getting too confident as far as overall trend and direction. And one thing I don't like about this is the right shoulder has already gone above the left shoulder, and it's been a fairly powerful move. Usually the right shoulder, you want to be a little bit lower than the left shoulder, and also not have as much power behind it, be maybe a slower, weaker move, not as much momentum. So there's certainly reasons not to like this head and shoulders pattern, and I'm certainly not overly enthused about it, but it still has to be respected until it's invalidated, and that means taking out the all-time high. So just keep that in the back pocket there, and this is still a potential major head and shoulders top forming. Although I think its chances of actually, coming to a major sell-off are greatly diminished, as I feel the same way about this bearish Elliott wave count. I feel this is greatly diminished in its probability. But nonetheless, let it invalidate before truly discounting that it could be the one, right? Okay, now that being said, I want to look at the shorter term Elliott wave outlook, and just from the wave 4 low, okay? So from that 27.22 level, so we got a 1 up, we got what I'm calling a 2 down there. Looks like we may have finished our 3, and we could have started our 4th wave corrective pullback here. And at this point, all I am expecting is some sort of corrective pullback, and then another push higher, at least one more push higher. Sorry, at least one more push higher in a smaller degree 5th wave to complete that larger 5th. Now, a few scenarios here. as long as we don't overlap with this high here, which I'm labeling, or which was at, let's see here, 2860. If we don't overlap with that, this can certainly still be just considered a typical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 impulse wave. But if we do overlap with it, we could actually just be doing an ending diagonal. And that's where wave 4 does overlap with wave 1. And wave 3 is shorter than wave 1. And then wave 5 would have to be shorter still than that to be an ending diagonal pattern. But right now we'll just see if it'll do a standard impulse and not overlap with 1. But certainly not out of the question to do that ending diagonal. And if we do overlap with 1, that would make the odds significantly higher that we're going to at least come down and close this big gap that we had here. So that would be a nice target if you want to try and play for that. But overall, the focus largely is still to the upside after this little pullback completes itself. At this point, I would be somewhat surprised to see a larger decline unfold, just because we still have an incomplete move to the upside here as far as the short-term wave count. Now, with that being said, we'll go do the Thinkorswim candlestick chart. And certainly on the daily candlestick chart, you see technicals are pretty bullish here. We got a golden cross well underway, 50 crossed above the 200. We've been staying above this T line quite nicely throughout most of this entire uptrend. And you can see even with today's down day, we didn't even get down to touch the T line, never mind close below it. But I can't rule out a gap fill here because gaps very often get filled. So if we do break down and close below the T line, that's a decent target to look for that gap fill. And we are in the overbought condition here, once again on the daily oscillator. So it wouldn't be out of the question to kind of come down and work off that overbought condition before resuming higher again. Okay, now if we go to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, similar picture here. And we are slightly below the T-line on the Dow, so the Dow a little bit weaker relatively to the S&P, coming off of the overbought condition, and looks like a gap fill maybe in the cards for the Dow. And in that case, that would certainly be likely to happen on all the indices. So the Dow might be kind of telling the story here after we had a nice doji star confirmed reversal. When was that? That was on April 5th. So last week we had that. But Dow very much in a golden cross here as well. So I would expect this just to be a corrective pullback at this point and lead to another advance. Really, we have to start taking out some more significant previous support levels to think that something maybe a little more immediately bearish is going on. And right now that just doesn't seem like the most likely scenario. Well, the Nasdaq Composite. And on the Nasdaq Composite, you can see we just made a new high on the Nasdaq, and not an all-time high, but certainly a new relative high from where we had been. And that was yesterday. Today, not very threatening, just looks like kind of a doji star kind of day, not even anywhere close to the daily T-line. So the Nasdaq showing more relative strength compared to the Dow or the S&P, and we're still just in the overbought condition here on the daily. Nasdaq also getting a golden cross here with the 50 crossing above the 200. So if you're going to try and be a bear in this market, you got to be quick. And these pullbacks, when they do happen, they seem to be fairly short-lived. So the focus, until proven otherwise at this point, needs to be on the upside. And again, maybe a gap fill. If you get a gap fill and it stabilizes, that could be a decent little long setup. But right now, we're just kind of waiting to see how this develops. Okay, now on the VIX. VIX definitely showing some life today, being that we were pulling back. But really, the VIX still in a fairly benign state. And if this just leads to another lower high on the VIX, and then we come right back down, that'll certainly be indicative of the indices just having a minor pullback and resuming its uptrend, or their uptrends. So not much here going on the VIX. I mean, a little bit of upward action, but certainly not anything I view as tradable here. I mean, your best shot going long on the VIX at this point would just be another lower high. So what, maybe around the 200 here, the decent little target. So that'd be 16 from a level of 14. Doesn't really seem worth the attempt, in my opinion. Something would have to substantially change here on the VIX. You'd have to start breaking out more convincingly before I'd be interested in trying to do something with this. Now let's see here. We are on a VIX sell signal tool, or tool sell signal, and I'll just point it out. So this is kind of like a mechanical signal, if you want to take it that way. So VIX bottomed, VVIX, VVIX was making a lower low compared to this area. I'll just highlight this. So from here, VVIX made a lower low. VIX made from this area, VIX made a higher low slightly. So you had a divergence between VIX and VVIX. VVIX got above the red moving average here. SPX then confirmed by getting below the blue moving average, which it's currently below as of today's close. So we are on a SPX sell signal here using this tool, although it's kind of a weak sell signal since there's really nothing substantial as far as the candlestick signals go and on the daily candlestick charts. But even, keeping that in mind, on this previous SPX sell signal we got a decent little decline from, if you took the signal when it confirmed, went from 28.30 or so down to 27.85. So you got a bit of a sell off there, 45 points or so when the signal took effect. So I'm not necessarily expecting that much of a move this time, although it wouldn't be that surprising. But just to point out, this is currently on a sell signal, so the very, very near term focus could be the downside, I suppose. But certainly looking to resume the uptrend once the minor corrective pullback completes. That's probably good for now. Serial Trader signing off.